And so, before we jump into DeFi yield stuff, other things that people need to understand, maybe from where we're going to now. I mean, like you said, finance traditionally has boxed out billions of people around the world. Okay. Also, we're seeing this evolution of something now called Web 3.0 from Web 2.0. Mm-hmm. Some people understand that, some people don't. How do you start to explain that to people?
Yeah, so you and I were obviously having a bit of a conversation around this, and I like to quote Gavin Wood on it. For those who don't know, Gavin Wood was the original CTO of Ethereum. He wrote the original Yellow Paper. He did a lot of the early coding. He's doing a project called Polkadot now. And I love Gavin because he's a builder. Like in general, okay, the reality is that DeFi and crypto represents a lot of opportunity for investors and things like this. But I have just enormous respect for people who actually build stuff. The reality is it's hard, just like it's not an easy thing to do, but it also really makes a difference. And especially when people are innovative about it, I think there's a lot of people who, it's just so easy to take somebody else's code and fork it, and it's basically the same thing again. And it's like, all right, like, yeah, maybe you can make $1 million off doing that, but that's not where the real value lies in, right? The real value lies in building. And so I respect him a lot for that. And he goes and gives this narrative in 2014 after Edward Snowden had released all the documents that he did. And he makes this comment about how we live in a world where we know we can no longer trust any centralized institution. And obviously we've got a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. We've just come through, 2020, 2021 with COVID. We're going through this thing with Ukraine, et cetera, and a million other things. And I think one of the things that disturbed me going through a lot of that period was seeing the degree of institutional trust that some people have, that they still haven't realized this. And the problem is, I watched something earlier today, and they were talking about, central bank digital currencies and, the ability to control things. And it's like, some of this stuff is kind of innocuous where you don't care about it until you need it. And there was a conversation on Twitter a little while ago. Somebody was talking about decentralization and like, does decentralization matter? It's like, well, decentralization doesn't matter until it matters.
Yeah.
And when it matters, it really matters. So to me, decentralization is at the heart of Web3. And the truth is there's a lot of things that are put under the banner of that aren't decentralized. OpenSea is not decentralized. Lots of things are not decentralized. Even some of the main networks are not very well decentralized. Some of that is just a function of time because decentralization is a progressive process. If you were to go back to the original Bitcoin, Satoshi was the only person running a Bitcoin miner, right? Because he was the only. So it takes time to get there, and that's understandable. But at the core of the technology is the ability to be open, permissionless, decentralized, so that if you disagree, like somebody's censoring these transactions, okay, great, I can fire up my own server and I can process those transactions and I can allow it to go through and whatever, and nobody can stop me. It's not like I have to get permission from someone. So I think that's the core, and the key mechanism, I've heard you talk in various different interviews about it, it's something that comes up a lot, is the concept of consensus, right? You say, okay, well, once we have many people all over the world working on some problem, how do we agree on what is I want to say the truth, but it's not really the truth. It's like what to the correct order of the transactions to what happened, et cetera, and to the accuracy of the data, I guess. And that's consensus, right? So consensus is, of course, the key piece of technology that's necessary in order to make decentralized systems work. And again, to quote Gavin, he did an interview recently, and he was saying, you can build. Well, actually, I'll give two anecdotes he said that I thought are worth repeating. One is he said, it used to be if you wanted to give money to your uncle, you're sitting there on the couch with them and you pull out your money and you hand them some money. No problems. It's like today you have to trust a bank to send money to your uncle. He's like, you shouldn't have to trust a bank to send money to your uncle. And equally, you and I are sitting here conversing. That's great. Well, today, most of the communication, you have to trust Zuckerberg to communicate with someone. You shouldn't have to trust Zuckerberg to communicate with your friends. And somehow along the way, governments have made it as though this is normal, this is proper, right? They create this narrative of like, well, what if that person is doing terrorism? And it's like, look, for the last few hundred years, you weren't concerned if they handed the cash to their uncle whether somebody was doing terrorism. Who the hell are you to get in there and be involved in this? And of course, what we know, you know this very well, is anytime you create systems that are permissioned, eventually the person who decides is the person you will least want to decide. And so it's really, really important for the future of the world to build systems that are open and transparent and so on and so forth.